Hello and welcome. In this video I want to talk about a lot of the basics of electric bass. This is particularly for our students at school who suddenly don't have access to their double bass, but for me electric bass is always home territory because I played it before I played double bass. I love it. It's an extension of the other instrument and vice versa, and so everything that you can do on the double bass you can do on the electric bass, just not bowing, although you can even try to do that. So let's get started. First of all, how you hold the instrument is important. Do use a strap, whether you're sitting or whether you're standing. When you're sitting, like I am now, if I were to take away the strap, you'll kind of see where I have it, So you can see that it really falls here. So this thing is holding it up to a pretty good extent. Now that exactly where is certainly personal, and you should experiment. You should try different things. Some funk players would play it really high, so it's good for slapping, and of course rock and roll players like to have it down there. But I think somewhere in the middle is where you should at least start. The idea being that you could have good access with the left hand. Let's see. Okay, so that's the first idea. The second is that when you're pulling the string, see if I take away this arm, now this thing is just sort of floating here. So what makes it solid is the weight of the right arm in conjunction with the back pressure of the other. So you're not squeezing with the thumb. So that's important. So if you can do those two things, then you can get down to the business of the same things that you would do on the double bass, of moving your fingers, of shifting, of course, those two main things. So a few ground rules here. You want to be playing right on the frets. That's very important. So I'm feeling like right now this is what, 7th fret. I'm up right underneath where it is, right where the fret is. So I'm pretty consistent and conscientious about that. That's pretty important. Now there are two fingering systems that you'll want to use and be aware of. There's the idea of 1 finger per fret, and there's the idea of 3-finger German system, Simandl, 1, 2, and 4. The Italians used 1, 3, and 4, that's another story. But yeah, 1, 2, and 4 in the low register is a better idea, because right here I'm playing half steps, semitones, between 1 and 2 and 4, and it's very, very comfortable. If I were to try to play 1 finger per fret, I could do it, but it's more of a strain, more of an extension. So the way I'd suggest you look at it is to look at it like a 3-finger system is the natural, organic way to be doing it in the low register, where the frets are farther apart, and somewhere in the middle range of the instrument that you would go to 1 finger per fret. Just in general, we like to think 7th position, so 7th fret, D on the G string would be definitely where you would go, and then you would extend back. So when you're practicing things like finger studies, do exactly what we do on the double bass, really, etc. And when you're up here, same kind of stuff. Only now you're with four fingers. Okay, and let me see here. I think that's everything I wanted to cover with the basic structure of it. So now let's talk about navigation with the fingerboard. Playing scales is essential for all musicians, and so with scales we have 2 ways of working: horizontal and vertical. I like to call this horizontal, but I'm sorry, just take 2 on that. I like to call it vertical, but it certainly looks horizontal. So whatever way you want to call it, let's start with those fingerings. Up and down 1 string. So duple fingerings is a very natural way to learn and work any scale. Start with learning the major scale. Here's a C major scale. Play it 2 notes per position. So you have to get the timing right. I had that glitch there when I went up. The basic idea is that you're grabbing the string in between every note, so you and you can even play it with 1 finger, play a 1-finger scale. So like what we would do on the double bass. You have to feel lighter when you're shifting, release a little bit of pressure, and yet at the same time you're always in your mind hearing a singing sound and trying to copy that singing sound, although you know that it's impossible. You can't really go if you do that on this instrument, because we can't bow it. We've got to have that attack. So basically learn all your scales from the root. Be able to do that on any string from the root, learn the various other kinds of scales that we need to know. The minor scales, the melodic minor, the harmonic minor, are also 7-note scales. So when we add the 8th note for the octave, that 1-octave unit is a very convenient way to play them. Now when you're transitioning into modes, my suggestion would be to basically play all your major scales starting from any degree of the scale. So if I were playing a C major scale, I would do what I just did before, and then I would practice the same scale from every other degree of the scale. So therefore, if I were doing the C major scale from the open G string, all in 1-octave units, it would go like this. And then I would do it on the other strings. So you continue on from there. Be able to do that in any key, and now you really know the neck of the instrument. You know where the scales are, and you know them not just from the root, but from any other place. Try to not think about it like I'm playing a different mode when I'm starting at a different scale degree. That will actually hang up your mind, in my opinion, when you're actually playing, when you're improvising or reading. Because any scale, that C major scale that I played, just as well could be thought of as an A natural minor scale, or a G mixolydian, or an F Lydian, and so forth. The idea is to get the sound and the feel of the scale from any note and be able to navigate up and down the fingerboard. So basically, when we're playing these vertical scales, you have the duple fingering idea. I call it duple fingerings, 2 notes per position. And that's the main way that you want to do this. The other ways are the 1-finger way. It's good to do that because it really forces you to be loose when you shift, and it also forces you to use your ear to know where things are. The thing I like about this is you know where those half and whole steps are. They're laid out by the frets. They're defined. And when you go back to playing this stuff on the double bass or a fretless bass, suddenly it's a different thing for sure. But the foundation that you lay with this instrument it's very important. So for those of us who have to leave the bass in the locker there at Smith Hall, we're fine. We're going to use this, and this will be our tool now for the next few weeks, and we're going to just learn and grow a lot. That's my hope. That's what I want you to do. So then when we look at playing scales across in position, because the instrument is tuned in fourths, it's very convenient to play a major scale without having to shift once we get into 4 fingers. So briefly, let's look at that. So the first pattern, position, form is this one that I'm showing here, which is, so that's the basic root to root C major scale. So the extent of the position then would be, I have right under that C, I have a B, and then if I continue on up beyond the C, I have an F on top. It's actually a pretty good range. It's a very good place to work on patterns, things like thirds, fourths, various 3 and 4 note patterns. So on and so forth. It's a great place. So, when you learn that form of your major scale first, from there are going to be other forms. At first, you'll see about 3. I'd like you to be able to do 7 forms, basically thinking the C major scale from any one of the other diatonic pitches within C. But start slow, like so. We have C major here. Another good place would be up here. This is the 12th fret. Here would be at the 2nd fret. Now in this case, let's talk a little bit about I could go to 4 fingers like this, but to show you with 3 fingers, now you have to sort of move between 2 positions, or you can use an extension. So everybody knows this, I'm sure, but just to kind of look at like how I'd like to approach it, let's think fingers on the frets, and then when we move to get that one note, in this case the E, when I go slow, my thumb would move. So just exactly like the double bass. So I touch F, and then I move back. Same thing here. But when you play fast, you have 2 different ways that you can do this. One way is that you can reach back. So the way we reach back is, see, right now I'm touching my 4th finger on the fret there. My 2nd finger is on that fret, so it's G and that's F sharp. Here's F. If I want to play an E instead of an F, but still have the F sharp and the G touching, I lift up the 1st finger, and now I can see that I've got a tremendous amount of distance between my 2 fingers there. So all I need to do is rotate a little bit. See, I'm even down to an E right now. So that's pretty easily. I could almost get to an E flat. So that means then that if I were as a regular non-extended position, then extended would simply be, it's a stretch, but try to make the stretch back from the outside of the hand, and basically my thumb is still opposite my 2nd finger, not something like that, which will make your hand tight. You can see the tension in my hand when I do that. So we're trying to stay away from tension. So that's the basic idea. The other way, in addition to extending the finger, is simply to pivot on the thumb. So now I'm actually moving the whole position, but I'm not moving my thumb. That's another way you can do it. So right now my thumb is, well, it was crept up a little bit. I was just looking at it. So it's opposite 2nd finger, and I'm at the 2nd, or what is this, 3rd fret. So now if I go back to the 2nd fret, I could work that. That's sort of like Francois Rabath kind of idea of keeping the thumb in the same place. So think about it kind of as regions. So okay, that's kind of a lot of information, but so that's playing with a pivot fingering. My thumb is staying in the same place. I'm playing that same pattern. So when you look at that pattern, you think about it as a region, and you say, okay, I could play this extended. Or I could play it with a closed position, but with a 1st finger extension. Whoops, try that again. Or I could play it at a faster tempo. It would be easier just to do the pivot like I would. So that's the general idea there. Eventually you want to get to where you can play in 7 positions and still be in C major. So they would be, that's the first one. Slowly that would be, and then the same idea in the other positions. Let's move on from there. So that's just a sort of a general overview of what you're going to do when you're doing, you're varying some of the up and down string playing of scales with the cross imposition way of playing your scales. So I think we'll close on that note for this particular video. So happy practicing. Do all of the same things that you would have done on the double bass, which is basically finger studies, finger combinations, shifts, and then some right hand technique, which is accents and string crossings. So those are your basic technical core studies for the left hand and the right hand. Those two, with shifting being very, very important. I think in general, when you're learning some kind of new material, like in a future video, I'll talk about the whole tone scale and the octatonic or diminished scales. And because those scales have this different kind of sound to them, instead of worrying so much about how they work across the instrument, which can tend to be more of a tactile, memorized fingering pattern kind of a thing, and less of an ear-driven, and yet I understand the theory of it kind of thing. So always start your scales going up and down one string. Get the major scales down, get the melodic minor scale, by which I mean ascending melodic minor, or people say jazz melodic minor, the same notes up and down. Those two modes are extremely important. Parent scales, I guess we could really call them, because they lead to most of the scales that you need to know allegedly in most courses in jazz. You know what scale typically comes out of a certain chord. After that, your next order of business will be the whole tone and the diminished scales. So we'll do that in another video, and that's plenty for right now. Obviously, anytime, let me know if you have any questions, and happy practicing.